What if the help you keep giving is not producing growth because it is teaching someone that you will always carry the consequences for them? Think carefully. You give more time. You provide more money. You offer another explanation, another reminder, another second chance. You rearrange your priorities to solve an emergency you did not create. Yet after all your effort, the same crisis returns wearing a different shirt. The details change, but the pattern remains. You call it love because you care. You call it loyalty because you stayed. You call it sacrifice because it cost you something. But a good intention does not automatically produce a good result. You must examine the fruit of your help. Is the person becoming wiser, stronger, and more responsible? Or are they becoming increasingly certain that when they refuse to carry their responsibilities, you will carry them instead? Now, let me be clear. This is not an invitation to become selfish. It is not permission to abandon someone who is truly vulnerable. It is not a command to close your heart, ignore genuine need, or withdraw compassion. Caring is honorable. Generosity is powerful. Sacrifice has a rightful place. But kingdom love does more than relieve pressure. Kingdom love supports growth. It tells the truth. It protects dignity. It strengthens responsibility. Enabling may look compassionate in the moment, but when it repeatedly shields a capable person from the results of their choices, it begins to protect immaturity. And then both people lose. The helper loses time, energy, clarity, and focus. You keep giving with your hands while resentment grows in your heart. You become exhausted by responsibilities that were never assigned to you. And eventually you become angry at the person you trained to depend on your rescue. The receiver loses something too. They lose the opportunity to prepare, to correct, to learn, to follow through, and to grow. Your relief becomes their escape. Your availability becomes their excuse. What felt like kindness becomes a system that keeps one person depleted and the other undeveloped. So the question is not simply, did I help? The deeper question is, what did my help produce? You can love without controlling. You can support without carrying. You can return responsibility without revenge. But to do that wisely, you must first separate four behaviors caring people often confuse: service, sacrifice, rescue, and enabling. Service, sacrifice, rescue, and enabling may all cost you something, but they do not produce the same result. If you judge them only by emotion, you will confuse them. You must judge them by purpose, responsibility, and fruit. Service is the willing use of what belongs to you to help another person carry what belongs to them. You offer your time, your wisdom, your ability, your encouragement, or your resources. But you do not replace their participation. Service says, I will walk with you while you take the necessary steps. It strengthens the person's capacity instead of making your presence the condition of their progress. Sacrifice goes further. Sacrifice accepts a purposeful cost for a worthy need. There are seasons when someone is injured, grieving, overwhelmed, inexperienced, or temporarily unable to carry their normal load. Love may require you to carry more for a time. That is not weakness. That is compassion under the direction of purpose. But healthy sacrifice has meaning, boundaries, and direction. It helps a person through a season. It does not create a permanent identity for them. Then there is rescue. Rescue is appropriate when immediate danger or genuine incapacity makes ordinary responsibility impossible. When a person is drowning, you do not stand on the shore and give a lecture about swimming. You intervene. You stabilize the crisis. You protect life. But listen carefully. An emergency response cannot become the permanent structure of a relationship. If every week is an emergency, every request is urgent, and every consequence requires your intervention, rescue has stopped being an event and has become a system. That system is enabling. Enabling is repeatedly doing for a capable person what they must learn, choose, repair, or carry for themselves. It does not merely relieve suffering, it protects avoidance. It does not restore order. It delays accountability. It may feel loving because the pressure disappears, but temporary relief can hide long-term damage. Support walks beside a person. Enabling walks in their place. Mercy opens another opportunity. Enabling removes every consequence. Love speaks the truth needed for growth. Enabling keeps disorder comfortable so that nobody becomes upset today. And this is why intention is not enough. You may mean well and still produce dependence. You may give sincerely and still preserve irresponsibility. You may call your actions sacrifice while its fruit is exhaustion in you and entitlement in them. So stop asking only, was I kind? Ask, what is my kindness producing? Is this person moving toward truth, responsibility, capacity, and self-government? Or are they moving toward greater dependence, avoidance, and expectation? The name of the action is revealed by its fruit. And once these four forms of help are clear, the deeper question can no longer be avoided. Who was actually assigned to carry this responsibility? Responsibility is not a punishment. Responsibility is stewardship. It is the authority and obligation to govern the choices, commitments, responses, and consequences that belong to your life. Every mature relationship needs this order. You carry what has been entrusted to you, and the other person carries what has been entrusted to them. You may encourage one another. You may cooperate. You may share strength in a difficult season. But support does not cancel ownership, and ownership does not eliminate support. Community works when people bring responsibility into relationship, not when one person surrenders it and another person absorbs it. Now understand this distinction. Responsibility is not the same as blame. A person may not be responsible for the wound they received, the loss they endured, or the circumstances that confronted them. But they are still responsible for what they build from that place. They must choose whether to seek truth, accept help, develop discipline, and move forward. You can assist that process, but you cannot make those choices for them. Disorder begins when you adopt another adult's assignment as your personal obligation. You begin to believe their deadline is your emergency, their neglect is your debt, their discomfort is your failure, and their disappointment is your guilt. Then every yes to their avoidance becomes a no to your own purpose, priorities, and peace. There is a difference between helping someone create a plan and managing the plan every day. There is a difference between providing temporary relief and repeatedly financing disorder they refuse to confront. There is a difference between speaking truth with compassion and manufacturing excuses to protect their image. There is a difference between teaching someone how to do the work and becoming the unpaid worker they expect to appear. One builds capacity, the other transfers responsibility. Your time is not unlimited. Your energy is not ownerless. Your money, influence, attention, and access are resources placed under your stewardship. People may benefit from them, but no one is automatically entitled to consume them without truth, gratitude, participation, or respect. That is why a boundary is not merely a wall. A healthy boundary is a line of responsibility. It says, I will carry what belongs to me. I will support you in carrying what belongs to you, but I will not confuse love with taking over your life. Sometimes saying no to a misplaced burden is how you say yes to order, yes to purpose, yes to growth, yes even to the other person's potential. But here is the difficult truth. Many people understand this principle and still cannot release the burden. They know what belongs to the other person, yet they keep reaching for it. Why? Because excessive helping is not always driven by love alone. Sometimes hidden beneath it are fear, guilt, control, and the need to be indispensable. Your compassion may be real and still be carrying motives you have never examined. That does not make you evil. It makes you human. But what remains hidden cannot be governed. And what cannot be governed will eventually govern you. Sometimes you help because you are afraid. You fear rejection. You fear conflict. You fear being alone. You fear that one firm no will erase every loving yes you have ever given. So when someone calls you selfish, unkind, or disloyal, you abandon your conviction to protect their opinion of you. That is not freedom. That is fear wearing the clothing of generosity. Sometimes you help because of guilt. The other person becomes disappointed, and you immediately assume you have done something wrong. They become uncomfortable, and you treat their discomfort as your responsibility. So you give not because giving is wise, but because giving silences the accusation inside you. But another person's disappointment is not always evidence of your failure. Sometimes it is simply the feeling they experience when responsibility returns to them. Sometimes you help because you want control. This motive is difficult to admit because control can look like concern. You solve every problem, supervise every decision, and prevent every consequence because uncertainty makes you anxious. You call it protecting them, but beneath the protection is a demand. I must guarantee the outcome. Yet love cannot govern another person's will. You can offer truth, wisdom, and support, but you cannot control the choices another adult makes. And sometimes being needed has become your identity. You do not merely want to contribute. You need to be indispensable. Their dependence makes you feel significant. Their emergencies make you feel important. Their inability gives you a permanent role. But being needed is not the same as being valued. If a relationship requires another person to remain weak so that you can feel strong, neither person is free. Even spiritual language can conceal these motives. Fear may call itself loyalty. Avoidance may call itself peace. Compulsion may call itself sacrifice. Repeated surrender may call itself forgiveness. But endurance without truth does not create maturity. And mercy without discernment can make disorder easier to continue. Ask yourself honestly, would I still offer this help if nobody praised me? Am I responding from wisdom or from fear? Am I giving freely or am I trying to escape guilt? Do I want this person to become capable or do I need them to keep needing me? Do not use these questions to condemn yourself. Use them to become clear. Replace fear with conviction. Replace guilt with truth. Replace control with trust. Replace the need to be indispensable with devotion to your own purpose. Love must be chosen freely. Help given under emotional pressure may look generous at first, but over time it becomes obligation, exhaustion, and resentment. And these hidden motives do more than trouble the heart. They create a repeating system whose costs eventually appear in both lives. A repeated rescue does not remain an isolated act. It becomes a cycle. First, a preventable crisis appears. Then comes the urgent call, the emotional pressure, the promise that this time will be different. You interrupt your schedule, spend your money, use your influence, or absorb the consequence. The immediate pressure disappears. Everyone feels relief. But because responsibility was never accepted, no new discipline is formed. No preparation is made. No behavior is corrected. Eventually, the same crisis returns, and the cycle begins again. Every repetition trains both people. You are trained to respond faster. You start anticipating problems before they are even presented. You monitor, remind, explain, pay, cover, and repair. Meanwhile, the other person is trained to wait. Why prepare if you will intervene? Why follow through if you will finish? Why confront disorder if your time and energy will protect them from its cost? Then the burden begins to accumulate in you. Fatigue enters first. Your own commitments are neglected because someone else's urgency keeps rearranging your priorities. Financial pressure increases. Emotional strain follows. Your focus weakens. Your peace disappears. Yet you keep smiling because you do not want to appear unloving. But suppressed anger does not vanish. It becomes resentment. Resentment is not permission to punish, humiliate, or retaliate. It is a warning. It may be telling you that your giving is no longer connected to freedom, truth, or proper stewardship. You are giving with your hands while protesting in your heart. That internal division is evidence that something must be examined. The receiver is also paying a price, even if the price is less visible. When every consequence is removed, the person loses valuable information. Consequences reveal what preparation must change, what discipline must develop, and what decision must not be repeated. If you constantly silence that feedback, you may preserve comfort while delaying character. Over time, the relationship itself becomes distorted. One person becomes the permanent manager, the other becomes the permanent emergency. One carries the plan, the other carries the promise. One feels used, the other feels controlled. Honesty weakens because the helper is afraid to admit exhaustion, and the receiver is afraid that truth will threaten continued access. Affection becomes tangled with duty, pressure, and expectation. Temporary crisis support is different. It responds to genuine need, includes the other person's participation, and moves toward restored capacity. A chronic rescue system repeats despite ability, ignores patterns, excuses non-participation, and produces no lasting change. The greatest danger is not simply that you become tired. It is that both of you become loyal to roles that prevent maturity. You as the rescuer and them as the rescued. And a system cannot be broken by emotion alone. It requires discernment. because emotional moments can hide what repeated behavior has already revealed. Emotion sees the moment, discernment sees the pattern. Your emotions matter. They may reveal compassion, fear, grief, hope, or attachment. But emotions cannot be the only authority over repeated responsibility. A desperate request can make you forget the last 10 broken agreements. Tears can make you ignore the absence of preparation. A powerful apology can make you believe that sorrow and change are the same thing. Discernment waits and watches. It watches what happens after the apology when the emotion has settled. It watches what happens after the promise when discipline is required. It watches what happens after the emergency when there is time to prepare for the future. It watches what happens after assistance is given, when gratitude must become participation. Do they take initiative or do they wait for another rescue? Do they receive correction or attack the person who speaks honestly? Do they honor agreements or create new explanations for breaking them? Do they change consistently or perform change only when access to your help is threatened? Do not let one intense moment erase a repeated pattern. Ask what the arrangement is producing. Is there increasing peace, order, and personal responsibility, or recurring confusion and crisis? When truth is spoken, does it produce reflection or retaliation? When assistance is offered, does it produce participation or another demand? When a consequence appears, does the person learn from it or immediately search for someone else to absorb it? These questions are not cruel, they are clear. Repeated pain can become instruction. It can reveal the cycle you kept calling an accident, the behavior you kept calling a bad day, and the disorder you kept calling a temporary season. Pain should not become your identity, but it should be allowed to educate your decisions. Learn the lesson without building your home inside the wound. And be careful, discernment is not suspicion. It does not require you to diagnose someone, assume every motive, or become hard-hearted. You do not need a label to recognize a broken agreement. You do not need bitterness to observe repeated conduct. You do not need hatred to admit that the present arrangement is producing damage. Stay with what can be seen. Choices, participation, honesty, consistency, consequences, and results. Let evidence clarify what emotional attachment has made difficult to accept. But clarity creates responsibility. Once you recognize the pattern, you must decide whether your participation will continue supporting it. Seeing clearly while acting exactly the same is not discernment completed, it is permission renewed. You can remain compassionate without denying consistent evidence. You can keep your heart open without keeping every door open. And now that the pattern is visible, you need a practical test to determine what you should carry, what you may share, and what must be returned to its rightful owner. Before you answer the next urgent request, pause. That pause is not indifference. It is stewardship. It creates space between emotional pressure and responsible action. In that space, ask 6 questions. First, ownership. Whose choice, commitment, work, repair, or consequence is this? Identify the original owner before deciding what assistance to offer. If they made the commitment, ignored the preparation, or created the damage, love does not require you to pretend the responsibility belongs to you. Second, capacity. Is this person genuinely unable, temporarily overwhelmed, still learning, or simply unwilling? These conditions are not the same. Someone who cannot carry a burden may need you to carry it for a season. Someone who is learning may need instruction and patience. But someone who repeatedly refuses responsibility does not need another substitute. They need truth. Third, participation. What step are they already taking? Not what are they promising. Not what are they feeling. What are they doing? Are they making the call, attending the meeting, following the plan, changing the habit, or repairing the damage? Healthy support meets participation. Enabling replaces it. Fourth, outcome. Will your help increase their future capacity or make the same request more likely to return? Do not judge only by the relief you can create today. Judge by the direction your help establishes tomorrow. Wise assistance should move a person toward greater responsibility, not greater expectation. Fifth, stewardship. Can you give this help without violating what has already been entrusted to you? Will it neglect your children, your health, your integrity, your essential commitments, your financial stability, or your purpose? Every resource has an assignment. Generosity without priorities becomes disorder. Sixth, freedom. Can you give without being coerced? Can the other person hear a limit without threatening, manipulating, shaming, or punishing you? Love can make a request, but love does not demand access through fear. A gift extracted by pressure is not freely given. Your answers lead to three possible responses. Do for someone when genuine incapacity requires intervention. Do with someone when learning, effort, and participation are present. Step back or redirect when a capable person repeatedly rejects ownership. You may offer information, accountability, or another appropriate resource without becoming the person who performs their responsibility. And define your support. Say what you will provide. State what they must do. Establish how long the arrangement will last. Clarify what will happen if the agreement is ignored. Undefined help easily becomes unlimited help. But do not misuse this principle. Boundaries are not an excuse to abandon duties that genuinely belong to you. Children, dependents, employees, contractual commitments, and people whose care has truly been entrusted to you require faithful stewardship. The purpose of the test is not to escape responsibility. It is to identify responsibility accurately. Remember the formula. Carry your assignment, assist their growth, and refuse to become the substitute for their responsibility. A correct decision, however, is only the beginning. Responsibility must now be restored through clear language and disciplined follow-through. Do not wait until anger chooses your words. Decide the boundary before the emotional conversation begins. When principle makes the decision, you can speak with clarity. When resentment makes the decision, even a necessary boundary can become a weapon. Returning responsibility requires 4 movements. First, describe the pattern without exaggeration. Do not say, "You never care," or "You ruin everything." Speak about what can be observed. "We agreed that you would handle this, but I have continued stepping in when it was left unfinished." Facts create clarity. Accusations create another argument. Second, identify the rightful responsibility. Say plainly, "This decision belongs to you. This commitment belongs to you. The next step must come from you." You are not rejecting the person. You are returning their authority to govern what belongs to them. Third, explain what support remains available. You might say, "I care about you and I am willing to help you make a plan. I can show you the process. I can listen while you consider your options, but I will not make the decision or complete the work for you." Fourth, state what you will no longer carry. "I will not keep paying this avoidable cost. I will not make excuses for the missed commitment. I will not keep reminding you after the agreed deadline." If you choose not to act, the result of that choice will remain with you. That is clarity with dignity. Then your behavior must agree with your words. Stop covering what they refuse to confront. Stop finishing what they refuse to complete. Stop rescuing them from every avoidable cost. Stop negotiating against the decision you made simply because they became uncomfortable. Replace rescue with support that produces growth. Offer information. Help construct a plan. Teach the skill. Recommend an appropriate resource. Provide accountability. Listen without taking control. Help with the first responsible step, but do not walk the entire road in their place. And understand the difference between a consequence and a punishment. A consequence allows the result of a choice to remain with its owner. A punishment manufactures pain to control, shame, or retaliate. You do not need to create suffering. You simply stop repeatedly removing the result that responsibility was meant to address. Do not disappear without explanation merely to create anxiety. Do not use contempt, threats, public embarrassment, or silence to force repentance. These actions do not restore order, they preserve control. A boundary is not revenge with respectable language. Speak briefly, speak truthfully, speak calmly. Endless explanation often turns a clear decision into an open negotiation. You may listen to a response without reopening the boundary every time an objection appears. Most importantly, follow through. A limit repeatedly announced and repeatedly abandoned teaches people that enough pressure will defeat your conviction. Consistency gives your words integrity. You can change your participation without attacking another person's dignity. You can return responsibility while leaving the path to growth open. But once the load is returned, resistance may arise, and you must be prepared to face guilt, accusations, and relational change without becoming bitter. Expect resistance. When you stop carrying what another person has grown accustomed to handing you, they may call you selfish. They may create dramatic urgency, appeal to everything you have done in the past, withdraw affection, or suddenly make promises they never made while access felt secure. Do not panic. Another person's displeasure is not automatic proof that your boundary is wrong. Sometimes responsibility feels painful simply because dependence felt easier. Discomfort may be the first honest signal that the old arrangement is changing. Your task is not to control their reaction. Your task is to govern your own heart. This is where forgiveness must be separated from permission. Forgiveness releases vengeance. It refuses to let bitterness govern your spirit. Permission determines access. It answers whether the person may continue participating in your time, energy, finances, trust, and private life in the same way. You can forgive and still say no. You can care and still exercise caution. You can pray for someone and still refuse to finance their disorder. You can keep your heart clean while keeping your boundary firm. Compassion and wisdom are not enemies. Sometimes greater distance becomes necessary, not because one mistake occurred, but because dishonesty keeps repeating. Agreements are repeatedly violated. Accountability is treated as an attack. Affection is used as leverage. Access is continually converted into another opportunity for manipulation or avoidance. Distance, however, must not become revenge. Do not withdraw merely to create fear. Do not become unavailable simply to chase an apology. Do not use silence to prove superiority or make the other person suffer. Distance should protect truth, peace, and purpose, not feed pride. And if access is ever restored, let it be restored by evidence. Tears may be sincere, but tears are not a new pattern. Promises may sound powerful, but promises are not practiced responsibility. Look for initiative, honesty, follow-through, respect for limits, and consistency over time. You will also need patience with yourself. If you have spent years rescuing, one conversation will not erase every old impulse. You may feel guilty after a wise no. You may want to rush back and remove the discomfort. Remain steady. Every consistent no to misplaced responsibility strengthens self-government. Every calm refusal weakens the old cycle. Every decision aligned with truth makes the next decision clearer. You do not need hatred to hold a boundary. You do not need panic to protect your purpose. You do not need control to let consequences speak. Now, understanding must become practice. It is time to choose one deliberate act that restores responsibility to its rightful owner. Do not leave this as an inspiring idea. Choose one relationship. Choose one recurring crisis. Choose one responsibility you have been carrying for a capable person and write down its rightful owner. Then make two decisions. Identify one form of support that can remain, perhaps listening, teaching, planning, information, or accountability. Next, identify one rescuing behavior that must stop. Prepare one clear sentence. I care about you and I am willing to support this step, but I will no longer carry this responsibility for you. Then let your next action agree with your words. Do not wait for a perfect moment. Use the next appropriate request as an opportunity to restore order. Stop protecting avoidance and start supporting growth. Stop purchasing temporary peace and start honoring lasting order. Stop confusing exhaustion with faithfulness and start stewarding your purpose. Stop measuring love only by what you give and start examining what your giving produces. Now return to the question that began this message. When does help become enabling? Help becomes enabling when it repeatedly prevents another person from carrying the responsibility through which maturity must develop. It becomes enabling when your compassion removes participation, when your mercy protects avoidance, and when your sacrifice makes disorder easier to repeat. You were not created to become the permanent substitute for another person's responsibility. Carry your assignment. Honor your commitments. Serve with generosity. Sacrifice with purpose. Rescue when genuine need requires it. But when a capable person must learn to stand, love them enough to stop standing in their place. Be generous enough to serve, wise enough to tell the truth, and disciplined enough to maintain the boundary. The choice is yours. Keep carrying what was never assigned to you, or love people in a way that restores responsibility, dignity, and growth.